It is not the strongest, or the most intelligent, who will survive, but those, who can best manage change. A man, who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. Only the fittest will survive. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change, that lives within the means available, and works cooperatively against common threats. It's not the strongest, but the most adaptable that survive. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. It is not the most intellectual of the species that survives, it is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt, and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence, than does knowledge. Some may call it evolution, and others call it God. The world will not be inherited by the strongest, it will be inherited by those most able to change. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals, because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. Even people who aren't geniuses can outthink the rest of mankind, if they develop certain thinking habits. If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry, and listen to some music at least once every week. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. The most powerful natural species are those that adapt to environmental change without losing their fundamental identity, which gives them their competitive advantage. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy the interposition of the great deity, more humble, and I believe true to consider him created from animals. Endless forms most beautiful, and most wonderful have been, and are being evolved. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals in their ability to feel pleasure, and pain, happiness, and misery. A mathematician is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat, which isn't there. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence, than does knowledge. It is those who know little, and not those who know much, who so positively assert that this, or that problem will never be solved by science. The willing horse is always overworked. Blushing is the most peculiar, and most human of all expressions. If everyone were cast in the same mold, there would be no such thing as beauty. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Music was known and understood before words were spoken. There is a grandeur in this view of life, from so simple a beginning aimless forms most beautiful are being evolved. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation, but the history of science shows that fortunately this power does not long endure. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. The fact of evolution is the backbone of biology, and biology is thus in the peculiar position of being a science founded on an improved theory. Is it then a science or faith? Building a better mousetrap merely results in smarter mice. Freedom of thought is best promoted by the gradual illumination of men's minds, which follows from the advance of science. If I had life to live over again, I will give my life to poetry, to music, to literature, and to art to make life richer and happier. In my youth, I steeled myself against them, and thought them so much waste. I've called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. I have been speculating last night, what makes a man a discoverer of undiscovered things. As far as I can conjecture, the art consists in habitually searching for the causes and meaning of everything which occurs. Free will is to mind, what chance is to matter. At no time am I a quick thinker, or writer. Whatever I have done in science has solely been by long pondering, patience and industry. I always make special notes about evidence that contradicts me, supportive evidence I can remember without trying. Nature will tell you a direct lie, if she can. Worms have played a more important part in the history of the world than humans would at first suppose. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. Every new body of discovery is mathematical in form, because there is no other guidance we can have. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Nothing exists for itself alone, but only in relation to other forms of life. The school as a means of education to me, was simply a blank. Much love, much trial, but what an utter desert is life without love. Multiply, vary, let the strongest live, and the weakest die. Everything in nature is the result of fixed laws. The normal food of man is vegetable. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. To suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. Wherever the European had trod, death seemed to pursue the aboriginal. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay whole systems of universes, to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect, we wish to be created at once by special act. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created parasitic wasps with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. To my deep mortification, my father once said to me, "You care for nothing but shooting, dogs, and rat catching, and you will be a disgrace to yourself, and all your family." I was a young man with uninformed ideas. I threw out queries, suggestions, wondering all the time over everything, and to my astonishment the ideas took like wildfire. People made a religion of them. It is so easy to hide our ignorance under such expressions as the plan of creation, or unity of design, etc., and to think that we give an explanation, when we only restate a fact. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. In the survival of favored individuals and races, during the constantly recurring struggle for existence, we see a powerful and ever-acting form of selection. The most energetic workers I have encountered in my world travels are the vegetarian miners of Chile. The grain in the balance will determine which individuals shall live, and which shall die, which variety, or species shall increase in number, and which shall decrease, or finally become extinct. It is mere rubbish thinking, at present, of origin of life. One might as well think of origin of matter. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth as far as our reason permits us to discover it. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Nothing before had ever made me thoroughly realize, though I had read various scientific books, that science consists in grouping facts, so that general laws, or conclusions may be drawn from them. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine, for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. If it could be demonstrated, that any complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down, but I can find no such case. You will be astonished to find, how the whole mental disposition of your children, changes with advancing years. A young child, and the same when nearly grown, sometimes differ almost as much as do a caterpillar and butterfly.